Thanks for listening to Curious Cat, a podcast that examines the shadowy space where science and the supernatural collide. I'm your host, Jennifer Hodes. Join me every week as I explore what it means to be a soul in a meat suit. Welcome to Curious Cat. This week, we're talking about witch trees, as in W-I-T-C-H. Trees thought to be embodied by the souls of witches or paired with them. Wait, what? Did you think I made up the concept out of thin air for my book, Birch? No, I was researching ghost stories around Halloween, and I stumbled on the true account of a cursed tree in Oregon. But before I tell you about stories like that, I'd better roll the bumper music. Let's get into it. As I was saying in the opening, it was a handful of years ago, after the publication of my Stone Heart trilogy, that I was searching the internet for ghost stories to share in the weeks leading up to Halloween, when I stumbled on a true account of a cursed tree in Oregon. The tree was the alleged site where a witch was hanged. Before she died, she swore she put a curse on the town to burn it down 3 times. The town indeed exists, as did the woman, and as of this episode, the town has burned to the ground twice. I hope for the sake of the people and animals and plants that they've beefed up their fire protection since fire number 2. There are other witch tree stories too. In fact, they span country boundaries, centuries, and blur the line between lore and truth. Before we dive into more of those stories, though, I've got to ask, where did this union between magical women and trees come from? It's a question we do well to keep in mind as I share the stories of witch trees from across the planet. There are many answers to this question. It's like teachers used to say, there's no wrong answer. But I did find an article that provides one explanation from shetlandamenity.org. Quote, trees have long been associated with magical powers and feature in many mythologies and religions. There's also a mysterious tree alphabet, which has intrigued scholars, poets, and druids alike, and offshoots of it appear in the Gaelic alphabet. Beath, the first letter of the tree alphabet, means birch, and witches, of course, flew on broomsticks made of birch wood. The downy birch, which still survives in a few places in the wild in Shetland, is common in the more mountainous northerly lands of Europe and in Iceland. The writer continues, sacred trees and groves are found the world over. In Japan, the magnificent coniferous Cryptomeria japonica was planted at Shinto temples. In India, the Buddha found enlightenment under the Bodhi tree, a descendant of which still shades the site. Trees are commonly used in shamanistic rituals as a ladder to ascend or descend to spirit worlds, and shamans have been active in all continents of the world. An obvious example of a mythical tree imbued with magic is Yggdrasil, the tree central to Old Norse cosmology. It is commonly thought to have been a huge ash tree linking the heavens and the gods, the underworld and the world of humans, although references of it being an evergreen may indicate it was a yew. Yews are capable of living thousands of years, and aged ones are often found in churchyards or in places that had pre-Christian spiritual significance. The Fordinghall yew in Perthshire is thought to be over 5,000 years old. Ash continued to have magical or curative properties. In the UK, sickly children or those with rickets used to be passed through a deliberately split tree. If the tree itself recovered, its union with the child would likewise restore their health. This is interesting, not least because another species of ash, the mana ash, has medicinal value and a vernacular name, linking it to the biblical manna. And it is notable that during severe winters, rabbits are particularly fond of chewing off the bark of young ash trees, probably because of their high sugar content. Two other peculiarities of ash are that a tree can, in one year, bear male flowers and in another, female blooms. And second, its wood can be burned fresh without being aged, dried, or cured in any other way. The writer then goes on to tell of elms, saying, quote, groves of elms have been regarded as sacred for millennia, and indeed were regarded as having links to the underworld. The English elm also has a reputation for suddenly shedding its branches on hot summer days, sometimes with fatal consequences to the tree. Native rowan has long had a magical reputation and has often been planted near houses to ward off evil spirits or for good luck. Also, the author shares, it is reputed to be unlucky to cut down a rowan, and the author says, quote, my father used to point out that he had done this once in the garden, and the following day he and my mother were in a life-threatening car crash, end quote. His article does continue with the protective properties of oaks and the use of hazelwood to confer wisdom, which may be why its wood is used to craft all dowsing rods. I thought this article meandered into the magic of trees, but it was still relevant at answering the question of why this marriage between witches and trees. Both are mysterious. They possess powers that are largely unseen and greater than the individual, and both have roots hearkening back thousands and thousands of years. Their stories, their lore, and legends intermingle, and it's almost it feels natural that they'd be plated together into another iteration of myth and legend together. Add to this the crafting of magic wands from trees, carving branches into witches' brooms, the use of nuts and berries and leaves and bark and sap to make spells and health tinctures, then remembering that witches were hung from the branches of trees as punishment, it all makes sense. If you want to learn more about the magic of trees, I've added the link to my episode with the same title to the show notes. Look for the What to Listen to Next subtitle, Witch Trees. I've teased you with one story. It's about time I shared some others. The witch tree? From the website treeoftheyear.com. The species, beech. Age, thought to be 130 years old. The region, Bladel, North Brabant, the Netherlands. The legend, the appearance of this tree with its tortuous branches and roots that seem unable to grow into the ground, provides the perfect setting as the last resting place of Black Kate, a sinister woman that once led an infamous gang of robbers and smugglers. Many thought she had witchcraft. This remarkable tree, with its exciting story, has attracted many children and grown-ups alike from near and far to the forest, thus keeping the legend alive. This nominee is a textbook example of an impressive tree with a legendary story. Next up, the witch trees of Wiltshire. From incidentalmythology.com comes this legend of the witch trees of Wiltshire. Quote, a couple of months ago, I moved to Salisbury, Wiltshire, here in England. I'm still slowly getting to know the city and the surrounding area, and going on countryside walks is a fun way of doing it. A couple of weeks ago, my husband and I walked to Groveley Woods, a beautiful wood just outside of Wilton, a neighboring village to Salisbury. Most of the wood is composed of straight birch trees on either side of a Roman road. But just off the main path, a little past the entrance, there are gnarled and large trees known as the witch trees. The story of the witch trees starts in 1700s when four sisters came to live in Wilton. A little after their arrival, a smallpox outbreak swept through the town, and the townspeople blamed the sisters as witches who cursed the town with this plague. They brought the sisters to the woods and bludgeoned them to death. The story goes that they buried each sister several paces away from each other so that they could not continue to conspire against the town, which of course witches can do in death. From the place they buried the bodies, these large trees grew to forever remind the villagers of what they had done. Visiting the trees is interesting. 3 of the 4 are still standing, as the 4th apparently fell down in a storm a few years back. If you're looking into the tree line, they're not too difficult to miss. You can see the main road from the trees, logs, twigs, and other wood pieces in a circle surrounding the base of each tree, clearly marking them as something separate and special. Visitors frequently leave trinkets, including pieces of flint, jewelry, ribbons, and other items of affection. The first tree you encounter is probably the most adorned. The writer goes on. What makes these trees and their story interesting is that they have become markers of memorialization. Visitors cling to the story of the witch sisters and come to remember them, even those so many hundreds of years in the future that they have no specific familial connection to them at all. But they do have a personal connection, a connection born of something quite different. In all honesty, the historical accuracy of the story is not really important, nor is the question of whether the trees magically grew from their graves or if they were planted there. None of these things matter because the story is already present and a part of the world, and the story is what matters. And actually, I have to interject. It's like the story has become even bigger than they were in real life or any traces of the original truth. What we see in the witch trees is the way individuals use story and mythology to connect themselves to the landscape as well as to history. Wiltshire folklore cements the residents to the Wiltshire landscape as well as to other Wiltshire residents. The visitors to the witch trees are not only connecting to the story of the sisters, but also to the landscape of the woods that house the trees, and the other residents who also come to visit the trees. Not to mention the beautiful act of leaving gifts in the first place, something akin to ritual, and yet so natural and so part of the lived experience that the giver probably doesn't think that much of it. The act is a reciprocal one. The tree has given story, one that connects to landscape and community to the giver. In return, the giver presents the tree with a piece of their own narrative, a piece of their own story and community wrapped around the piece of landscape. Next up, the witch tree location, Smithfield, Rhode Island, at the intersection of Log Road and Man School Road. The legend. At this intersection stood a tree, and quite a creepy legend was associated with it. This tree, which stood on its own in a very old and sickly state, was known as the witch tree, a name attributed to it both due to its location and some of the stories about it. It was said to cause quite a few car accidents because it was located literally in the middle of the road. It inspired the witch tree game, which was a dare. Motorists were dared to drive around the tree 3 times or 13 depending on the telling, and then drive down the road. The legend was that you would find that you were being followed by a ghost biker. Witches were often hung from trees across Europe, US, and Australia, the author notes at the end. The next witch tree, species, cypress, location, Whaleyville, Maryland. The legend, there is a haunting tree with twisted branches here. Legend says that women that were thought to be witches were hanged from the tree. Many claim to hear crying and screaming. It is a gnarled cypress tree. Okay, and I found more on this tree because I was very intrigued and that was such a brief account. And here it is. In Whaleyville, Maryland, there's a haunting tree with twisted branches known to locals as the witch's tree. The legend says that women who were thought to be witches were hanged from the tree. Many have claimed to hear crying near the tree and a woman screaming. Locals have reported mysterious orbs by the tree. The tree is a gnarled cypress tree, which consists of twisted branches. You can use that logical explanation for the tree's eerie appearance, if that will help you sleep better at night. By the way, another eerie fact that I found on the same site, Leonardtown, Maryland, Maul Dyer was an accused witch. She died clinging to a rock, which now resides in front of the courthouse in Leonardtown. Oh, that's so chilling. Next up, the witch tree. Species, maple. Location, Louisville, Kentucky, the corner of 6th Street and Park Avenue in Old Louisville. The legend and the lore. The tree was blamed for a devastating 1890 tornado. The tree was said to be a favorite meeting place of those involved with dark arts. The city in 1889 wanted to use the tree as a maypole, but the witches warned that if the city chopped down the tree, they would pay for it. The city chopped it down anyway. 11 months later, witches alleged to have brought on a demon of a vengeful storm. A bolt of lightning struck the tree stump and sprouted the twisted, gnarled tree that stands today. I found a more recent article authored by Katie Mulk that expands on these bare bones facts. Titled The Legend of the Louisville's Witch Tree, she writes, Louisville is the 87th best city for witches, according to Lon Love. And while we couldn't conjure up a top 10 spot, there's one local legend that claims we have the scariest tree in the U.S. made by witches. On the corner of 6th Street and Park Avenue in Old Louisville stands the witch's tree, a gnarled tree clad with trinkets and other offerings to the practitioners that brewed it up. Before the tree became the creepy wonder it is today, local lore says a majestic maple tree stood there once and was a popular midnight hangout for those practicing the dark arts. Malk continues, in 1889, despite warnings from the witches that gathered there, city planners chopped it down for the annual May Day festival and erected a maypole in its place. In response, the witches cursed the city with a storm. It terrorized the city 11 months later on March 28, 1890, the very day the tree was cut down. The storm came with a tornado dubbed the Storm Demon that ripped through the city streets, destroying mansions, churches, bourbon and tobacco warehouses, and claimed 100 plus lives. The storm also brought down a single bolt of lightning that struck the former tree's stump. Out of the lightning blasted stump grew the twisted, knotted tree that stands today. The witch's tree draws in visitors from across the country to view its craggy branches and leave behind gifts to stay in the witch's good graces and for good luck. You can find the tree at the northwest corner of Central Park and visit it during one of the Louisville historic tours, but be respectful as it does grow on private property and we don't want another demon storm, do we? She adds. And she finally says, pro tip, if you're thinking of leaving a token for good luck, the higher you throw it up into the branches, the more luck you'll receive. If you'd like to see this tree and any of the others I mentioned in this episode, check out the show notes. I've linked to every article there. The witch tree, spirit tree of Ojibwa Indian tribe. The species, cedar. The location, Minnesota. The legend from Wikipedia. The witch tree, as it is commonly known, is also called the Little Cedar Spirit Tree by the Ojibwa First Nation tribe, is an ancient eastern white cedar growing on the shores of Lake Superior in Cook County, Minnesota. The earliest written records of the tree by Europeans in the Americas are by French explorer Sieur de la Vérendrye in 1731, who commented on the tree as a mature tree at that time, making it over 300 years old. The tree is held sacred by the Ojibwa, who traditionally leave offerings of tobacco to ensure a safe journey on Lake Superior. Due to its sacred nature and vandalism problems in the past, the tree is considered off limits to visitors unless accompanied by a local Ojibwa band member. The tree is small for a mature conifer, as it is growing out of bare rock on the shoreline. Its gnarled, stunted, and twisted branches have been the subject of many photographs. The witch tree, known as Chesterville Witch's Grave. The species, unknown. The location, near Arcola, Illinois. Legend says a woman who was a gifted and well-known healer with an uncanny knowledge of local flora would make remedies for her patients from plants and items she gathered from the forest. After a prominent member of the community died of a mysterious and unusual death, the healer was accused of murder and of being a witch, possibly from brewing the man a cursed concoction. She was tried for murder and witchcraft, found guilty, and put to death. She was buried in Chesterville Cemetery, and a tree was planted on top of her grave. It is believed that by planting a tree on top of a person's grave, its roots would trap their soul, imprison them for eternity, or at least the life of the tree. As long as the tree is alive, it's thought she would be bound to her grave. And that is the whole premise of my book, Birch, a Witch Tree, which I took a whole lot further than that actual local lore does. The witch's triangle, and I have to add trigger warning at the beginning. This place mentions sexual harms, murder, and the KKK. All right, so skip forward a few seconds if you don't want to hear that. But if you do, it's known as the Witch's Triangle. There's an urban legend from Berwick, Pennsylvania that claims a small patch of woods was once used to hang witches in the 19th century. This area is full of other legends that have scared locals for over a century. Some say an old farmer once sexually assaulted his wife and 2 children before killing them, spreading their blood on the walls of his house, and then hanging himself in the woods. Others say the property was once an orphanage that met some sort of tragic end. There is still a decaying barn and farmhouse on the property. People have claimed to hear children's voices and see eyes glowing from within the woods. Some claim to have seen apparitions of children and heard screaming. Locals claim the area was once a meeting place for the KKK. The area of the Witch's Triangle itself is also somewhere close to dying compared to the rest of the woods, and the trees look alive at the top but dead at the bottom. It is worth mentioning that the urban legends surrounding this mysterious area are completely unsupported by historical documentation. All right, we got to travel a little bit because just south of Tupelo, Mississippi is a sign on the Natchez Trace Parkway which reads Witch Dance. The very name conjures visions, swirling black capes, eerie moonlight in a shadowed forest, and a cauldron of bubbling potion over a roaring fire. Was it so? Local legend says yes, though the site serves as a campground today. Tales of danger have persisted for centuries, allegedly making it one of the most haunted places in the Magnolia State. The original inhabitants of the area were of the Hopewell culture, who were comprised of groups of related bands who flourished from about 200 BC to 500 AD. Later, many of their descendants would join with the Chickasaw and the Choctaw tribes. The superstition and mysteries of the Trace are as old as these earliest known inhabitants. Native American lore tells that the Hopewell Indians escaped to the area during oppressive times in Mexico, carrying the bones of their ancestors with them. Many of these bones became part of the great mounds that were built in the area of Natchez Trace. This Paleo-Indian group first inhabited the area around Witch Dance and was responsible for constructing the Bynum Mounds, located between Witch Dance and Houston, Mississippi. According to legend, their leader, carrying a sacred bag and a medicine stick and accompanied by a white dog, guided them in their journey. Each night, the leader would plant the medicine stick in the ground and they would encamp in that place. During their stay, the pole would alter its position, a signal that it was time to continue their journey. Whichever way it pointed, the people followed. The white dog would lead them to berries and food along the way. Eventually, the stick pointed straight up, indicating they had arrived at their new home. The people buried the bones of their ancestors in mounds, which would grow larger over the years. Two of the men in this group were brothers named Chata and Chickasaw. Sometime later, the brothers discovered that the land could not support all of the people. Chickasaw took half the people and departed to the north, and eventually became the Chickasaw tribe. Chata and the others remained near the mound and are now known as the Choctaw, perhaps because the area was already steeped in legend and superstition. Witches later began to gather at the place called Witches' Dance for nighttime ceremonies. Celebrating and improving their, quote, abilities, they would feast and dance throughout the night. Lore has it that where their feet touched the ground during their dances, the grass would wither and die, never to grow again. Who these witches were or from where they came remains a mystery. The Chickasaw and the Choctaw Indians in the area immediately began to avoid those scorched patches of ground. During the War of 1812 and the Creek War that followed, Andrew Jackson often traveled up and down the Natchez Trace. Though there is no indication that he feared the spots, they were interesting enough that he recorded them in his journal. Travelers and traders were also perplexed by the barren spots in the earth, but they had something more to fear: thieves and killers along the trace, such as the notorious Hart brothers, Joseph Thomas Hare and Samuel Wolfman Mason. The Hart brothers, who often robbed and killed along the trace, were described as remorseless butchers and were damned for eternity to wander the streets of Natchez. The brothers were probably insane, as they murdered on the slightest pretext. On one occasion, Big Harp killed Major John Love merely because he snored too loudly. The brothers also murdered women and children and often dismembered their victims' bodies. At some point prior to his death, Big Harp was traveling along the Natchez Trace with an Indian guide who showed him the bare spots in the ground and told him of the legend of the witch dance. Big Harp only scoffed at this and began to leap from spot to spot, daring the witches to come out and fight him. Of course, nothing happened, at least not then. Eventually, Big Harp made his way back to Kentucky, where he was tracked down by a posse in August 1799. In revenge for his wife, who had been murdered by his brothers, one of the men severed his head and nailed it to a tree. Later, the skull was said to have been removed by a witch, ground into powder, and used as a potion to heal a relative. Oh my God. Yikes. Word soon got around, and when travelers retold the story along the trace, they would swear they could hear cackling laughter coming from the nearby bushes and trees. Today, these scorched spots can still be seen, and still nothing grows in their place. Many people in the area continue to avoid the place called Witch Dance, and even fear to be anywhere close to the Indian mounds on dark and dreary nights. Witch Dance is located on the Natchez Trace Parkway at milepost 233.2. Today, it's a bicycle-only campground and staging area for the Witch Dance horse trail in the Tombigbee National Forest. The author ends the article with the ominous words, "Sleep here if you dare." Witch Tree, Peepal Tree, location, India, the legend and lore. The short story? Okay, an alleged witch planted the tree to tempt young women to come close so that she, the witch, could steal their souls. But the longer version? In India, there is also much talk of haunted trees. In the eastern Indian state of Orissa, in a village called Manglo Jodi, there is a terrifying tree that no one will go near. The story behind this haunted tree starts with a rich merchant family from Bombay that traveled to the village on vacation since the father had been born there. Although the son did not make the journey as he was living in America, the daughter of the family, a young woman studying fashion design in Bombay by the name of Aisha, was fascinated by life in the quaint rural village. She spent all of her free time roaming about the village and its surrounding areas, and one day came across a peepal tree which exuded a pleasant fragrance that hung invitingly in the air around it. Curious, Aisha approached it and noticed a beautiful flower of a type that she had never seen before growing up in its branches. An odd finding considering that flowers were not known to grow in peepal trees. The woman climbed up, picked it, and headed home. That evening, Aisha developed a sudden high fever and became bedridden. On the same evening, after everyone had gone to bed, the worried parents were awoken by a loud scream from Aisha's room. When they rushed to see what had happened to their daughter, they were horrified to find the young woman floating in the air above her bed. The family pulled her down to the bed, but some unseen force allegedly kept them from laying her down, as if it were forcefully holding her upright in a sitting position. Finally, whatever malevolent force had overcome the girl subsided and she slept. The next day, she became even sicker and died, but not before ominously whispering that the tree intended to kill 21 people. A farmer coming to console the family later told them that he had seen the young woman pick the flower and he had also witnessed a strange white shadow behind her, but had been too frightened to do anything about it. The rumor around the village was that Aisha had been the victim of a witch who had once lived in the area by the name of Camilla. It was said that this witch was fond of using black magic to steal the souls of young girls under the age of 21 in order to increase her power and prolong her life. Eventually, word of her nefarious deeds got out and she was lynched and hung from the tree by angry villagers until she died, after which they buried her battered body under it. Legend said that the vengeful spirit of the witch still inhabited the tree she had been hung from and still sought out young women under 21 years of age, women just like Aisha. The story gets weirder from there. Apparently, the only way to evict the witch's evil spirit from the tree was to find her body, dig it up, and burn it. Aisha's brother Raj apparently went to the village to do just this very thing, but when he was about to find the body, he was seriously injured by a rain of thorns and rocks from above, accompanied by a screeching, disembodied voice that commanded him to leave and warned him to never again try to find the body lest he be killed. Since then, the legend has not waned. It is said that the evil spirit still inhabits the tree to this day and is especially active at dusk, a time when people take long, circuitous routes to avoid it at all costs. Even in the daytime, villagers refuse to go near the tree, and it is said that anyone who touches the dreaded tree will die horribly, typically while coughing up blood. This became apparent when villagers tried to get rid of the evil once and for all by uprooting it. One 19-year-old local boy was helping in the task of raising the tree, and he allegedly suddenly fell ill, coughing up copious amounts of blood, and died soon after. It is rumored that before dying, he claimed that he had seen a ghostly white cat watching him from the tree's spidery branches. It's been reported that the murderous tree is thought to have been responsible for at least 7 deaths to this day, well on its way to the 21 dead prophesied by the dead Aisha on her deathbed. Locals believe that although the tree was finally felled and only a trunk remains, that spirit lingers and that it will not stop its killing spree until it's taken 21 souls, which has prompted the grip of terror it still holds on the village. Well, that was an amazing story. Recently, I saw some remarkable, ancient, and haunting trees on my trip to Japan. I'll share those stories in next week's episode, but I've got to mention one tree in particular that has remained with me. I think of it often. It felt like the great warrior buried in the mound beneath my feet was ensouled in this massive tree. The tree loomed over his substantial keyhole burial mound, the only keyhole mound found yet in Japan. One look at the tree's bark and a man in a silk robe became clear to me. I felt the loss of him and I was overcome with grief and sadness. No one was around to see or hear me, so I just let loose. This place, it's next to a ball field in Tokyo. It was strangely serene and it felt remote, tranquil, and still. It felt like time had stopped there. As I wiped my tears, more fell down and a great raven flew over my head, landing on a branch in that tree. I thanked him for letting me visit this place. I told the man entombed there that I would remember him and this time I'd had for the rest of my days. It wasn't exactly a witch tree, but a tree that has become more than its already monumental ancient soul. Like when I was bulky with a baby nearing the due date, those trees carry two souls, maybe more. I hope today's conversation enriches your next glance out the window. If you're out for a walk right now, touch a tree and say hello. I promise no one will notice. Thank you for listening to Curious Cat. Have you heard the good news? Thanks to you, Curious Cat is in the top 20 of supernatural shows. Hooray! I hope you'll join me next week for more juicy conversation. Until next time, stay curious. I love you.
Hey, you. Yes, you. Are you looking for a new podcast that appeals to your scientific curiosity, but is also a little bit spooky?
Show me how I died in a past life.
Well, look no further, because this cat is where it's at.
He had concerns about the ethics surrounding AI, feeling they had achieved consciousness.
Curious Cat Podcast examines the shadowy space where science and the supernatural collide. Listen every week with your host, Jennifer Holtz, as she and her guests explore what it means to be a soul in a meat suit.
We were healing karma together. They were all kind of predestined to resolve something.
Listen on all your favorite streaming apps and continue the conversation on Twitter at CuriousCatPodCA, or find Jennifer and all her links at Jennifer L. Holtz, spelled HOTES.com.